So first they were just standing on the borderline of this world of eternal night. And Savitri was the first to dare, to have the courage to step forward. Armored with light, she advanced her foot to plunge into the dread and hueless vacancy. So we read the next two lines also. I'm going to read on from there. Against night's inky ground they stirred, moulding mysterious motion on her human tread. A swimming action and a drifting march, like figures moving before eyelids closed, all as in dreams went slipping, gliding on. The rock gates' heavy walls were left behind, as if through passages of receding time, present and past, into the timeless lapsed. Arrested upon dim adventure's brink, the future ended, drowned in nothingness. Amid collapsing shapes they wound, obscure, the fading vestibules of a tenebrous world received them, where they seemed to move and yet be still, nowhere advancing, yet to pass. A dumb procession, a dim picture bounds, not conscious forms threading a real scene. A mystery of terror's boundlessness, gathering its hungry strength, the huge, pitiless void surrounded slowly with its soundless depths, and monstrous, cavernous, a shapeless throat devoured her into its shadowy, strangling mass. The fierce spiritual agony of a dream. A curtain of impenetrable dread. The darkness hung around her cage of sense, as when the trees have turned to blotted shades and the last friendly glimmer fades away around a bullock in the forest tied by hunters, closes in no empty night. The thought that strives in the world was here unmade. Its effort it renounced to live and know, convinced at last that it had never been. It perished, all its dream of action done. This clotted cipher was its dark result. In the smothering stress of this stupendous naught, mind could not think, breath could not breathe, the soul could not remember or feel itself. It seemed a hollow gulf of sterile emptiness, a zero oblivious of the sum it closed. An abnegation of the Maker's joy, saved by no wide repose, no depth of peace. On all that claims here to be truth and God and conscious self and the revealing word and the creative rapture of the mind and love and knowledge and heart's delight, there fell the immense refusal of the eternal no. As disappears a golden lamp in gloom, born into distance from the eye's desire, into the shadows vanished Savitri. So this eternal night which Savitri is entering now, it is not our physical night. Our physical night is perhaps a short symbolic representation of that eternal night. But this is the night of unconsciousness, of nothingness, of emptiness, the immense refusal of the eternal no. There's an eternal yes also. We read about these two things, no? We read about that in book 3. And there the immense no, the eternal no, was liberating. But this is not a very liberating experience. You'll begin, Dhanalakshmi.
Against night's inky ground they stir, molding mysterious motion on their human tread, a swimming action and a drifting march, like figures moving before eyelids closed, all as in dreams, went slipping, gliding on.
So there are 3. There is the luminous soul of Shraddhavan. There's the god, death, a great looming dark shape. And there is Savitri. They paused on the brink of this realm of eternal darkness, and she has taken the first step forward into that abyss of eternal night. So the others also follow. They stirred, molding mysterious motion on her human tread. She is leading the way, and the way that she moves, they follow. Against night's inky ground. Ink. Nowadays we don't use ink much, but when I was young we had to write with pens that we dipped in ink. So ink is very dark, usually black or a deep blue. So here we can keep this adjective inky, meaning very, very dark, even if we don't use ink anymore. And their movement is like the kind of movement in a dream. This is not a solid world, no? So they're doing like a kind of swimming motion, as if they have to press through some kind of resistance, and a drifting march. It's not, although she put her foot forward, they're not really walking. No? And Sri Aurobindo says it's like figures moving before eyelids closed. Perhaps sometimes when our eyelids are closed, we can see figures moving, physically moving outside us. But also in our consciousness, we might see figures moving in a dreamlike way. So that's what he says. It's like in a dream, all as in dreams, when slipping, gliding on, smoothly drifting. Suresh?
The rock gates heavy, walls were left behind, passing through passage of visiting time, present and passed into the timeless past, arrested, abounding adventures drink. The future rendered, drowned in nothingness.
So it's not only that it's very dark, perhaps because it's very dark, there doesn't seem to be any passage of time. They were in this space between these walls of conscious rock, but those heavy walls are left behind, and now it's as if they are traveling through passages of receding time, as if the time is going away from them. Receding, something that's receding is moving further and further away. So the present and the past, it's as if it's going further and further away and dissolving, lapsing, falling or dissolving into timelessness, into a state where there's no time. And the future, of course, should happen next, but it's as if the future is stopped. There's no future. No? It's as if it has been stopped, arrested, on the brink, on the edge of dim adventure. Adventure is what might happen. You don't know what will happen. No? So in this way, it's as if the future too has stopped, it's ended, it's just drowned in nothingness.
Amid collapsing shapes that wound obscure, the fading vestibules of a tenebrous world received them, where they seemed to move and yet be still, nowhere advancing yet to pass, a dumb procession of dim pictured bounds, not conscious forms threading a real scene.
Yes, Sri Aurobindo is trying to help us imagine the unimaginable. Mm-hmm. So they can still see something. There are shapes and forms, but those are fading, collapsing. The outlines are fading away. So they seem to be winding, not just going straight, going around these collapsing shapes. They wound obscurely, in darkness, in shadows, without being able to see properly. And they move into the fading vestibules of a tenebrous world. A vestibule, in its origin, it's a small room at the entrance of the house where you take off your outdoor clothes and maybe your shoes. No? So the ante-rooms, before you reach that, before you really enter that world of shadows, they are passing through these in-between rooms, and they are fading, becoming less and less easy to see. Those fading vestibules received them. And in that space, they have the feeling of moving without going anywhere. And they don't move forward, and yet they seem to move from one space to another space. So it's two contradictory things that he says. In those vestibules, they seemed to move and yet be still, and they seemed to be still and yet they were moving. They're passing, they're moving on. And they are moving on in a dumb procession, a silent procession of three figures. Savitri in front, Shraddhavan, death. And he says it's like a picture. He says if all this is happening in a picture rather than them being conscious with a frame around it, that goes on and on and on forever, like in John Keats's sonnet about the Grecian urn. He says, you seem to run away, but you are always there. So it's like that. They are a dumb procession. They don't speak. They don't really move. They are bounded by this picture that is always the same. They are not like conscious forms moving through a real scene. It's all like a dream. Mila.
A mystery of terror's boundlessness, gathering its hungry strength, the huge, pitiless void, surrounded slowly with its soundless depth, and monstrous, cavernous, as endless throat, devoured head into its shadowy, strangling mass, the fierce spiritual agony of a dream.
Yes. So first there's this darkness, this shadowiness, this timelessness, but now comes terror, intense fear. Boundless terror. There seems to be nothing else. How can there be nothing else than terror? This is a terror that is mysterious. Perhaps that's the most dreadful kind of intense fear, when you don't know what you are afraid of. And that fear is slowly surrounding and becoming stronger and stronger. Its hungry strength, that terror is going to swallow them up. This huge, pitiless void. It's vast, it's empty, and yet there's something unforgiving and cruel about it. Pitiless, there's no pity. That is gathering round them, slowly surrounding them with its soundless depths. It's absolutely silent, deep. It's like being swallowed by a huge throat, a monstrous throat, a throat that's like a cave. It's shapeless, but it's really devouring her. It's swallowing her into its shadowy, strangling mass. As she gets swallowed, there's a tightness, a stifling tightness. Mother has described this experience. And Sri Aurobindo says it's the fierce spiritual agony of a dream. We can be having a very bad dream of some kind of shapeless thing swallowing us up into its darkness, and we can't wake up. No? No. Then there's this fierce spiritual agony, intense suffering of a dream. Praveen.
A curtain of impenetrable dread. Darkness hung around her cage of self, as when the trees have turned to blotted shades, and the last friendly glimmer fades away. Around a bullock in the forest tied by hunters closes in no empty night.
It's a very, very memorable image, and again, it's one of the places in Savitri where we feel Sri Aurobindo's sympathy for animals. The hunters will tie a bullock in the forest, maybe even in a kind of cage, because they want to catch the prey, the predator, the tiger or whatever. So just at twilight, they tie that poor bullock in the cage, and then they all go away, and the bullock knows that that night is full of tiger that's going to come and catch it. It's no empty night. So it's like that. It's as if our senses are a kind of net around us. Here he says a cage, because the bullock will be put in a kind of cage. But we can still see something. The trees are just blotted shades, like blots of ink. And the last friendly glimmer, those hunters must have lights with them. No? They all go away. The poor bullock is left all alone in that night, which is full of danger. That's what it is like. Bomb?
The thought that thrives in the world was here on May. Its effort in renounced to live and know, convinced at last that it had never been. It perishes all its dream of action burns. This clothed cipher was its dark result.
Yes. So she's come into a place where thought is no longer possible. All our thought, the activity of our brain, this struggling, toiling thought that's always moving in the world, here it gets dissolved, unmade. It has to give up its effort to live, to know. And it gives up its effort because it's convinced that actually it has never really existed, but it's only been something illusory. So the thought, the mind perishes, it dies. All its dream of action done, finished with. And this atmosphere that she's in now is the result of this dissolution of mind. This clotted cipher. A cipher here, it means a zero. But there's something thick and heavy about it. If you have a wound, you wait for the blood to clot. It becomes thick and stops running. Or we make clotted cream. We beat the cream until it is really thick and it won't run anymore. So this darkness has something like that. It is thick, physically thick, but at the same time it's nothing. That is the dark result of the collapse of thought. You try, Sarojini? Yes, come.
In the smoldering streets of this stupendous not mind cold nothing, breathe cold to not breathe, the soul cold not to remember or feel itself. It seems a hollow blue
Gulf.
of still
Sterile. Emptiness.
A zero of litres of the sun it closed, an augmentation of the Maker's joy, saved by no wet repose, no depth of space.
Of peace. So mind could not think. The breath could not breathe. It's stifling, no? This is a smothering stress. Stress is pressure. Smothering is when somebody puts something over your face so you can't breathe. This stupendous nothingness, it is smothering. Mother uses the word stifling. In that, under that pressure, the mind can't think, the breath can't breathe, so the life feels it's coming to an end. Even the soul cannot remember or feel itself. The soul seems to have become just a hollow gulf, a deep place of emptiness where there's nothing living. If something is sterile, in hospitals we try to keep everything sterile so that there's no bacteria to cause infection. Something that's sterile, there's no life there. No? The soul seems to be a zero, a cipher, which has forgotten whatever sum it belonged to. It might have been there might have been a whole process of multiplication and addition and division, but the result now is nothing, and it can't remember all those things that happened before. It seems to be an abnegation, a renunciation, a giving up or a loss of the joy of the maker, of the creator. Actually, the characteristic experience and feeling of the soul is delight, the divine delight. But that seems to have been lost. Perhaps in some spiritual disciplines we might try to lose that delight of the soul because we are aiming for peace, for quietude, for rest. Here the joy is lost, but there's no wide, calm rest. There's no depth of peace. Chandra. Void, naught, emptiness. Yes.
All the plants have to be truth and God, and conscious self and the really word, and the creative rapture of the mind, and love and knowledge and heart's delight therein. the innate precursor of the eternal glow.
Yes. So this naught, this nothingness, this world that she's entered now, it's expressing this eternal no. No to everything that here in our world we believe is truth and God, that we might experience as conscious self, or the revealing word, wonderful inspirations that come, or we read Sri Aurobindo and we think how revealing his words are. The creative rapture of the mind, that's the most wonderful experience that we can have, no? Love, knowledge, the delight of the heart, all these positive things that we believe in here and think we are experiencing here. It's as if there's a great no that comes and says, forget all that. It was just an illusion. You don't exist. Those things don't exist. None of it exists. None of it is real. It just says no to everything that to us is positive and valuable and full of worth.
So is it a region they are passing?
It's I think it's a state of consciousness, but it's experienced as a region. And we will see that Savitri has to pass through these successive worlds, which are states of consciousness. The world of eternal night, which is just beginning. And then she's able to emerge into the twilight, and finally into the everlasting day. And this is the difficult bit. Would you like to read, sir, at the back? Would you read?
As disappears a golden lamp in gloom, borne into distance from the eye's desire, into the shadows vanished Savitri.
You can read the next sentence also, please.
There was no course, no path, no goal, no end or goal. Visionless, she moved amid insensible gulfs, or drove through some great black unknowing waste, or whirled in a dumb eddy of meeting winds, assembled by the titan hands of chance.
Thank you. So the first sentence is simple and easy to understand and memorable, no? Like that bullock, the lamps are going away, the friendly lamps. So Savitri just vanishes into those shadows, like a golden lamp that's being carried away from the eyes that wish to see it. And she's carried into a place where there's no course, no way to go, no path. There's no sense of going to anywhere, no end, no goal. She can't see. She's visionless. She's moving, and she can't feel anything. There's a feeling of gulfs, of emptiness, but they are insensible. They can't be perceived really by the senses. Or she feels as if she's being moved quickly. It's not that she's driving a car or anything like that, but when you drive, you move with some determination and speed forward, as if that's what she's pressing her way through, some great black desert in which there's no knowledge, there's no consciousness. Or she feels sometimes like a leaf that's being whirled by the wind, picked up by the wind and whirled around in an eddy An eddy is a circular movement of wind or water. And here it's many winds from different directions, and it's as if they've been brought together by the Titan hands of chance. This is a chaotic situation. There's no particular reason why those winds should be coming and picking her up. And the next thing that she feels is a dreadful loneliness, aloneness. Joel, you would read?
There was none with her in the dreadful vast. She saw no more the vague tremendous God. Her eyes had lost their luminous Shraddhavan. Yet not for this her spirit failed, but held more deeply that the bounded senses can, which grasp externally and find to lose its object, love.
Thank you. So she's all alone in that dreadful vastness. She can't see the God, the figure of the God of death, the vague, tremendous God. She can't see Shraddhavan, although he's full of light. But Sri Aurobindo says she doesn't lose her courage because of this. It's not because she can't see Shraddhavan that she loses courage. She goes on holding onto him in a deeper and stronger way than our physical senses can hold on to somebody that we love. No? Our senses get hold of something externally, and they find things physically, and then they can lose them. No? Our loved object. It's not like that for Savitri. Andres.
So when on earth they lived, she had felt him strain through the glades as seen in her, its clefts, her being's vistas, opening their secrets to his search and joy. Because to jealous sweetness in her heart, whatever happy space his cherished feet preferred, must be at once her soul embracing his body, passioning dumbly to his tread.
Yes, a very poignant description. And you may remember that not so far back in book 1 of Canto 7, it was described how when Shraddhavan went out into the forest in daytime, her spirit went with him and felt and experienced what he was experiencing. And he too could dimly feel her presence surrounding and holding on to him. So that's how she's holding on to him now. No? Just then she couldn't see him, but nevertheless her spirit went with him and felt what he was feeling and experiencing. And she did that because wherever he went, whatever happy space his cherished feet preferred, she felt that must be a blessed space, the space where Shraddhavan chose to wander. That should be her soul embracing him and feeling his tread moving within her. So these scenes that he passed through in the forest, they are scenes in her, opening up their secrets to his search and his delight. Shraddhavan, please, yes.
But now a silent gulf between them two, and no abysmal
And two.
And to abysmal loneliness she fell. Even from herself,
cast out, from love remote. Long hours since long, it seems when sluggish time is measured by the throbs of the soul's pain. In an unreal darkness, empty and rare, she travelled treading on the corpse of life, lost in a blindness of extinguished souls.
Yes. So she had been, even when she couldn't see him in that darkness, she was holding on to him. But then a stage comes when even that is taken away. She loses the sense of being connected to Shraddhavan. She falls into a state of abysmal loneliness, falling into a deep, dark place, all alone. She even loses the sense of herself, even from herself cast out. She even loses the sense of her love. She feels far away from the love, remote, far away. And she seems to spend a long time like that, long hours. All the time seems to go slowly, sluggish, lazily, when we are measuring the time by the throbs, the heartbeats of the soul's pain. So for a long time she moves in this unreal darkness that's so empty and drear. Drear, it means sad and gloomy. So she travels on, and it's as if she's walking on the corpse, on the dead body of life. It's something deathly. And she's lost in this blindness, this darkness where nothing can be perceived, as if this darkness is just made up of extinguished souls. Souls are sparks of divine light, but there all those sparks have been put out. Extinguish. You extinguish a fire or a light, a candle.
Corpse of life is not a dead body. So life is
A corpse is a dead body. So it's as if life is dead. There's nothing left that is alive. Will you read, please? You told me your name, but I'm sorry, I've forgotten it. Marie? Yeah.
Solitary in the anguish of the void, she lived in spite of death. She conquered still. In vain her precious being was oppressed. Her heavy long monotony of pain, godly in its tears, self-torture tired.
Thank you. So she's all alone in that anguish, that intense pain of the emptiness. But she herself goes on living in spite of this state of death, death of the mind, death of the life principle, death of the soul. She still conquers, she can continue.
So, Savitri also in dead body. She's dead now.
No, she has left her body, so this is her immortal spirit that's moving through this world. So that powerful being of hers, although it's being subjected to all this pressure, the pressure is in vain. It's oppressed in vain. This heavy, long monotony of pain, something that's monotonous, it doesn't change. Tardily, at last, after a long time, it tired of its fierce self-torture. so revealing, these words, no? The being refuses to accept this suffering anymore. No? It finds another state, and that other state, the state of light, is what's expressed next. Mathilde, would you read?
At first, the same inextinguishable gleam, pale but immortal, flickered in the gloom, as if a memory came to spirit's bed, a memory that wished to live again, dissolved from mind in nature's natural sleep.
Yes. So a faint little gleam, inextinguishable. It can't be put out by all that pressure of darkness. No? It's pale, but it's immortal. And it's flickering like a candle flame in the breeze, in the gloom, in that darkness. And Sri Aurobindo says this little light, it's like a memory has come to some dead spirits, a memory that wants to live again. That memory has been dissolved from the mind. It's in this state of nature's sleep, the original birth sleep of nature. There's some similarity between these lines and lines in the very first canto of the poem, where Sri Aurobindo speaks of something in the darkness stirring, and something, it doesn't know what it's missing, but it tries to find it again. And it's like a soul long dead. Something is urging it to wake up again. And at the same time there's a pressure to go back into that natal sleep. Because it's felt all the effort that's needed to wake up. It would be such a great effort. But all can be done if the God touch is there. So, the line.
Like a baby reminding her mother.
Yes, that's the universe, no? Something. Yeah. It's on page 5. So there's something like that. Perhaps something like this happens to us. We leave the body, and the outer being dissolves, the body dissolves, the life force dissolves, the mind dissolves. Maybe even the soul can't find itself if it's not very developed. But then it will wake up again because there's something immortal there. So she's waking up like that. I think we'll stop there for today. Against night's inky ground they stirred, moulding mysterious motion on her human tread, a swimming action and a drifting march, like figures moving before eyelids closed. All as in dreams went slipping, gliding on. The rock gate's heavy walls were left behind, as if through passages of receding time, present and past, into the timeless lapsed, arrested upon dim adventure's brink, the future ended, drowned in nothingness. Amid collapsing shapes they wound obscure. The fading vestibules of a tenebrous world received them, where they seemed to move and yet be still, nowhere advancing, yet to pass. A dumb procession, a dim picture bounds, not conscious forms threading a real scene. A mystery of terror's boundlessness, gathering its hungry strength, the huge, pitiless void surrounded slowly with its soundless depths, and monstrous, cavernous, a shapeless throat devoured her into its shadowy, strangling mass, the fierce spiritual agony of a dream. A curtain of impenetrable dread, the darkness hung around her cage of sense, as when the trees have turned to blotted shades and the last friendly glimmer fades away, around a bullock in the forest tied by hunters, closes in no empty night. The thought that strives in the world was here unmade. Its effort it renounced to live and know, convinced at last that it had never been. It perished, all its dream of action done. This clotted cipher was its dark result. In the smothering stress of this stupendous naught, mind could not think, breath could not breathe, the soul could not remember or feel itself. It seemed a hollow gulf of sterile emptiness, a zero oblivious of the sum it closed, an abnegation of the Maker's joy, saved by no wide repose, no depth of peace. On all that claims here to be truth and God, and conscious self, and the revealing word, and the creative rapture of the mind, and love, and knowledge, and heart's delight, there fell the immense refusal of the eternal No. As disappears a golden lamp in gloom, borne into distance from the eye's desire, into the shadows vanished Savitri. There was no course, no path, no end or goal. Visionless she moved amid insensible gulfs, or drove through some great black unknowing waste, or whirled in a dumb eddy of meeting winds assembled by the Titan hands of chance. There was none with her in the dreadful vast. She saw no more the vague, tremendous God. Her eyes had lost their luminous Shraddhavan. Yet not for this her spirit failed, but held more deeply than the bounded senses can, which grasp externally and find to lose its object loved. So when on earth they lived, she had felt him straying through the glades as seen in her, its clefts her being's vistas, opening their secrets to his search and joy. Because to jealous sweetness in her heart, whatever happy space his cherished feet preferred, must be at once her soul embracing his body, passioning dumbly to his tread. But now a silent gulf between them came, and to abysmal loneliness she fell, even from herself cast out, from love remote. Long hours, since long it seems when sluggish time is measured by the throbs of the soul's pain. In an unreal darkness, empty and drear, she travelled, treading on the corpse of life, lost in a blindness of extinguished souls. Solitary in the anguish of the void, she lived in spite of death. She conquered still. In vain her puissant being was oppressed. Her heavy, long monotony of pain, tardily of its fierce self-torture tired. At first a faint, inextinguishable gleam, pale but immortal, flickered in the gloom, as if a memory came to spirits dead, a memory that wished to live again, dissolved from mind in nature's natal sleep.